The 90s was an explosive decade in gaming with meaningful leaps forward in graphics and gameplay mechanics that ushered in a whole new modern era, but there were also games that left a lasting impact for their memorable stories. In this video, we're going to focus on those games that had poignant scenes that moved us to tears, rousing tales of high-stakes heroism, characters that deftly explore the human condition, and more as we explore the incredible story-driven games of the 90s that you will enjoy even today. In the dystopian metropolis of Midgar, powered by the extraction of the planet's life essence known as Mako, ex-soldier mercenary Cloud Strife joins the eco-terrorist group Avalanche to sabotage the oppressive Shinra Corporation. Led by the passionate Barrett Wallace, Avalanche aims to halt Shinra's environmental exploitation that threatens global catastrophe. Cloud reconnects with childhood friend Tifa Lockhart, a skilled fighter running a bar in the slums, and encounters the enigmatic flower seller Aerith Gainsborough, who holds ancient ties to the planet. As the resistance escalates, the party expands to include other allies, venturing beyond Midgar into a vast world filled with ruins, villages, and natural wonders. Pursuing shadowy figures from Cloud's past, the story explores themes of identity and self-deception, the consequences of unchecked industrialization, corporate greed versus human survival, and the interconnectedness of life, death, and rebirth, weaving personal struggles with planetary-scale stakes. The narrative of Final Fantasy VII masterfully weaves together intricate character backstories with environmental allegory, creating many layers that unfold through exploration of a vast and well-fleshed-out world. The protagonists, and even the villains, are among the most memorable of all time, while the world's lore, which blends advanced technology with mystical elements in a unique way, engages you in some fairly complex moral dilemmas. Director Yoshinori Kitase talked about the shift towards a story driven by a single lead character, saying, "Our development concept for the story in Final Fantasy VI was to have over 10 main characters, any of which could be called the protagonist. We challenged ourselves to create a world without someone you could point to and say, this is the main character. This time, with FF7, we knew from the beginning that we wanted Cloud to be the main character, and we were going to tell his story." Raccoon City is overrun by zombies due to the T-Virus, a biological weapon developed by the Umbrella Corporation. Rookie police officer Leon S. Kennedy arrives for his first day on the job, while college student Claire Redfield enters the city searching for her brother Chris. Separated after a chaotic encounter, they make their way to the Raccoon Police Department, discovering it infested with undead and littered with clues about Umbrella's involvement in an outbreak. Claire encounters young Sherry Birkin, fleeing a monstrous pursuer, and learns of the G-Virus, a new mutagenic agent. Leon meets Ada Wong, who claims to be searching for her boyfriend, an Umbrella researcher. They navigate the station's puzzles and horrors, facing mutated creatures, a relentless tyrant stalker dispatched by Umbrella, and corrupt police chief Brian Irons, bribed to cover up the company's experiments. Escaping to sewers and underground labs, they uncover layers of betrayal, corporate greed, and biohazard atrocities. Resident Evil 2 employs a dual protagonist system where Leon and Claire's scenarios interlock, revealing complementary details of the outbreak and Umbrella's conspiracy through found documents, cutscenes, and environmental clues. This structure, including the zapping system where one character's actions impact the other's campaign, encourages multiple playthroughs to piece together the full chronology, enhancing replayability and depth. Themes of corporate malfeasance, personal loyalty, and the potential for ethical horrors of biotechnology are woven into encounters with supporting characters like Ada and Sherry, whose backstories add emotional weight to the story. Writer Noboru Sugimura contrasted this entry with its predecessor 5 months after release of the game, stating, "The original Resident Evil was just a survival/escape game. Jill and Chris's motivation was simply to escape the zombie-infested Spencer mansion, and they weren't given any independent characterization or motivation. That's why, for the sequel, we decided to create new characters with suitable motivations for the dramatic plot, like searching for her brother or a romance side plot." In the shadowed town of Tristram, nestled in the kingdom of Kondurus, a wandering hero arrives to confront rising horrors. Demons and undead pour from the depths beneath the ancient cathedral, corrupting all they touch. King Leoric, once noble, has descended into madness and risen as the Skeleton King. His son, Prince Albrecht, has been abducted into the abyss, while Archbishop Lazarus betrayed the townsfolk in a doomed expedition. The hero plunges into a multi-level labyrinth, church dungeons, fetid catacombs, volcanic caves, and infernal realms, facing beasts, sorcerers, and demonic legions. At the heart lurks Diablo, the Lord of Terror, amid an eternal cosmic war between heaven and hell. Major themes of the game include the insidious spread of corruption, the erosion of humanity under fear, isolation in the face of evil, and the blurred line between salvation and damnation in a grim Gothic world. The first Diablo game, like those that follow it, builds tension through scattered lore discovered in ancient tomes and cryptic NPC conversations, creating an atmosphere of mounting dread without overt exposition. The class-based character system also ties directly into the story, with each class, warrior, rogue, and sorcerer, offering unique dialogue and motivations that shape their interactions with Tristram's dark narrative. This approach gives players distinct role-playing perspectives, enhancing the dark setting. The randomized dungeon layouts, paired with fixed story elements, create a unique blend of replayable exploration and consistent narrative progression. Writing for GameSpot in his positive review, Trent Ward noted that Diablo is a title that combines the elegant simplicity of an action game and the addictive storyline of an adventure game with the personalization and exploration of an old-school RPG. In a steampunk realm where magic fades beneath Imperial Magitech tyranny, amnesiac Tara Branford escapes the clutches of the Empire and allies with rebels like treasure hunter Locke Cole, chivalrous King Edgar Roni Figaro, his bear-like brother Sabin Rene Figaro, and many other unforgettable characters. Battling deranged Kefka Palazzo's bid to seize ancient warring triad statues for ultimate dominion, they cross industrial hubs, spectral trains, the famous opera stage, and soaring landmasses, exposing the tragic fate of the Espers and the corrosive grip of technology. Focus falls on rebellion against despotism, revival of arcane forces, personal reckonings with grief and identity, and life's precarious spark in a fractured domain. In Final Fantasy VI, the character development meshes with ensemble shifts, letting backstories surface in focused scenes that feed into overarching strife. This character development makes the game really stand out, with each of the 14 playable characters having distinct backstories and motivations that unfold through personal subplots, creating a deeply interconnected narrative. The opera scene, where Celeste performs in a scripted musical sequence, blends gameplay with storytelling in a very unique way, using the Super Nintendo's sound capabilities to their absolute fullest to enhance the emotional impact. The Esper's integration into the story as both plot devices and customizable magic sources adds a layer of strategic depth tied directly to the world's lore. Producer and scenario writer Hironobu Sakaguchi made an interesting observation in an interview in 2019, saying, "People say that the odd-numbered FF games are system-based and the even-numbered ones are story-based, but it's just not determined in that way. It's simply a matter of the creators getting tired and not wanting to do things the same way as the last time, so they're just changing the way it's presented." In the Algo system, 1,000 years after the great collapse that shattered advanced civilization, the desert planet Matavia grapples with failing climate systems and a plague of biomonsters. Teenage hunter Chaz Ashley and his seasoned mentor Alice Brangwyn accept a routine extermination job at Piata's Academy, only to uncover ties to a broader ecological crisis orchestrated by the malevolent wizard Zio, who worships an ancient darkness. As threats escalate, they assemble a diverse party from across worlds. Journeying between Matavia's sands, icy desolus, and hidden realms, they confront cultists, malfunctioning AIs, and recurring cosmic entities like Dark Force. Concepts like the cyclical resurgence of primordial evil, inherited legacies of protection, and unity among disparate races against systemic annihilation all come together in a meaningful way in this game. The story of Phantasy Star IV interweaves character arcs with expansive lore, surfacing backstories through interpersonal dialogues and macro commands that simulate group dynamics and combat. Sci-fi elements like genetic engineering and planet-spanning algorithms blend seamlessly with fantasy motifs of magic and prophecy, building a cohesive universe where past events echo into present conflicts. The game's use of manga-style cutscenes also enhances the storytelling, delivering emotional and dramatic moments with unique visual flair. Director Rieko Kodama explained the team's method for crafting the world and its characters. For the characters, we figured out most of their personalities as we drew them. With each detail and bit of background we added to the characters, the story itself also expanded. The world of Phantasy Star IV came into view for us very incrementally. On the arid, decaying world of Filgaia, where ancient guardians slumber and environmental ruin spreads, young orphan Rudy Rough Knight uncovers his affinity for forbidden arms, powerful ancient firearms. He crosses paths with fast-draw swordsman Jack Van Buris, haunted by loss and seeking absolute power with his Windmouse companion Hanpan, and crest sorceress Princess Cecilia Lynn Adelheid, heir to a besieged kingdom with ties to mystical forces. As invading metallic demons accelerate the planet's decline, the trio bands together as Dream Chasers, exploring vast deserts, ruins, and settlements to harass golems, solve arcane puzzles, and rally allies. In Wild Arms, individual character prologues converge into shared journeys, layering personal motivations with the global tale that's revealed via environmental interactions and artifact discoveries. Exploration mechanics, like unique tools for each protagonist, integrate puzzle solving into progression, mirroring themes of adaptation and harmony. Music and anime cutscenes heighten the game's emotional resonance, while side quests expand on interpersonal dynamics and world history, blending Western aesthetics with fantasy elements to evoke a sense of epic discovery. Creator and lead designer Akifumi Kaneko later said, "The Wild West genre is pretty ordinary and not very rare, but with Wild Arms we take pop culture like Japanese manga and anime and combine them with the Wild West. That setting gives me more freedom with what I can do. It's interesting because it's almost like a parallel world that we've created." In the mystical Kokiri Forest, young orphan Link, an outsider without a fairy companion, is summoned by the ancient Great Deku Tree to retrieve the spiritual Stone of Forest amid encroaching darkness. Guided by new fairy Navi, he ventures into Hyrule, meeting Princess Zelda, who reveals prophecies of evil Gerudo King Ganondorf seeking the sacred Triforce, a relic embodying power, wisdom, and courage. Collecting spiritual stones of fire and water, Link pulls the Master Sword from the Temple of Time, awakening 7 years later as an adult in a blighted world overrun by Ganondorf's forces. He must awaken the sages across diverse realms, mountains, lakes, forests, deserts, and shadows to restore balance. The interesting time travel mechanic in The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time allows players to switch between Link as a child and an adult, dynamically altering the game world and its challenges, with puzzles and abilities tied to age-specific phases that underscore the irrevocability of growth. The many hidden elements you find under quests enrich interpersonal connections and world building, integrating themes of unity against corruption into exploratory loops that evoke wonder and poignant introspection long after you put the controller down. Ocarina of Time artfully explores the inexorable flow of time, the bittersweet transition from childhood innocence to adult responsibility, destiny's burdens, and the interplay of heroism with personal loss in a vast interconnected land. Producer Shigeru Miyamoto said in a 2013 interview, "I wanted to make sure we had something that felt a little bit simpler in terms of the differences between the world that Link experiences as a child and the world he experiences as an adult. For example, you would see how his relationship to the girls in the game would change from when he was a boy and he was an adult. When you were a child, certain characters might have been scary, or the adults who seemed stupid. How did you see them when you were a child?" It was about portraying the differences between those two to tell the story of a boy growing up. In the fantasy realm of Midkemia, a decade after the Rift War, Senior Locklear escorts Gorath, a renegade Moradel chieftain, southward to warn Prince Arutha of Krondor about an impending invasion by Dark Elf leader Delacan, who seeks to unite clans for conquest. Joined by novice magician Owen Belafort, they navigate treacherous roads riddled with ambushes, spies, and hidden agendas. In Krondor, with aid from sly Squire James, they uncover a web involving resurrected Nighthawk assassins, a manipulative Tsurani Great One named Makala, and a rift device threatening interdimensional chaos. Splitting paths, one group disrupts enemy supply lines and sabotages magical artifacts in shadowy forests, while the other ventures into elven lands and beyond to rescue allies and confront ancient secrets. Betrayal at Krondor's narrative unfolds across episodic chapters like a novel's structure, allowing exploration within defined arcs that reveal layered story elements through environmental details, riddles, and interactive dialogues. Shifting party compositions highlight evolving relationships and personal growth, integrating combat and puzzle solving as extensions of character motivations and world history. Moral ambiguities in quests echo broader ideas of cultural mistrust and sacrifice, while a vast, traversable landscape fosters a cohesive universe blending epic stakes with intimate encounters. Writer Neil Halford reflected on the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to work on a game based on Raymond Feist's Rift War novels, saying, "Adapting the work of a New York Times best-selling fantasy author meant an opportunity to learn from a writer at the top of his craft." A boy from the sleepy town of Podunk, USA chases his rambunctious dog into an abandoned mansion where a bizarre experiment catapults them into the patchwork world of Evermore. This surreal domain is revealed across themed epochs, primordial jungles swarming with beasts, antique empires of sand and stone, gothic fortresses shrouded in mystery, and gleaming orbital stations buzzing with machinery. Wielding makeshift weapons and brewing alchemical potions for magic, the duo teams up with quirky denizens, fire-wielding shamans, scholarly inventors, and regal figures to navigate labyrinths and combat robotic foes. The dog morphs into fitting forms per region, from snarling prehistoric hound to prim medieval pooch, amplifying its bond with the boy. Secret of Evermore's storytelling fuses whimsical pop references with layered world hopping, where each era's encounters peel back interconnected secrets via snappy banter and details revealed through many other ways. The silent protagonist invites the player's projection, while the canine's sometimes humorous transformations underscore adaptability and loyalty. Lead programmer Brian Fedrau reflected on the origins of Secret of Evermore in a 2022 interview. "We originally worked on a game called Vex and the Mesmers, named after its antagonists, with some of the same themes. However, after a pre-mortem of sorts, we decided it just wasn't up to snuff, and we basically started a new game with a new story, new settings, and new art. However, many of the themes seemed to me to carry over to the new context. It definitely evolved over time during development. People didn't want a light-hearted, G-rated B-movie styled romp through fantasy Americana. They wanted more darkness, unfamiliar Eastern lore, and more of Kefka going gwahahaha before doing something evil." Adventurer Lara Croft is hired by entrepreneur Jacqueline Natla to recover a piece of the ancient Scion artifact from a Peruvian tomb, sparking a global quest for its remaining fragments hidden in Greek monasteries, Egyptian pyramids, and lost Atlantean ruins. Traversing booby-trapped chambers and facing ferocious wildlife, mercenaries, and resurrected horrors, she pieces together clues about the Scion's cataclysmic power tied to a fallen civilization. Tomb Raider introduced Lara Croft as a strong, independent female protagonist, which was a bold choice for a gaming landscape of the mid-90s largely dominated by male leads. Her character blended intelligence, athleticism, and resourcefulness, shaping the game's narrative around exploration and puzzle solving in an ancient, trap-filled ruin. The story's integration of mythological artifacts like the Scion tied the adventure to a sense of global mystery and historical intrigue. Cinematics punctuate exploration with revelations that escalate from realistic archaeology to mythic confrontations. And the settings, which span the globe, evoke wonder, blending historical authenticity with mounting peril to create a saga of ambition and ancient reckoning. Artist Toby Gard remarked on inspirations for the game in a 2010 interview when he said, "I wanted to make an interactive movie. I loved Ultima Underworld, and when I saw Virtua Fighter, my mind exploded with the idea of what the two crossed together could be." A stranger stumbles upon a book that transports him to the deserted island of Myst, a nexus linking to otherworldly ages, distinct realms crafted through the ancient art of writing descriptive books. Amidst intricate mechanisms and lush, isolated landscapes, clues are discovered about Atris, a scholarly writer, and his sons Cirrus and Akinar, whose ambitions led to imprisonment and familiar rupture. Journals and artifacts hint at a saga of creation gone awry, where the power to author worlds breeds hubris and division. The tale of Myst occurs via scattered journals, ambient details, and interactive artifacts, letting players assemble pieces of history at their own pace for a deeply personal unraveling. Puzzles serve as gateways to lore, where solving mechanical enigmas reveals layers of betrayal and wonder, blending exploration with introspection. Sparse human presence heightens your feeling of isolation, turning each age that you visit into a canvas for ethical pondering and world building that resonates through subtlety rather than spectacle, encouraging repeated traversals to more fully grasp the nuanced connections. Director Rand Miller said in a 2020 interview, "We started off wanting to make something that felt like a world. Real worlds have history, so it was only natural that we add a story to ours. As we would draw a place, we would talk about the story. Story would fuel puzzles, and recursively, puzzles would feed back to support more of the environment. On the remote Shadow Moses Island in Alaska, elite operative Solid Snake emerges from retirement for a covert mission. A renegade unit, Foxhound, has hijacked a nuclear disposal site, holding hostages and threatening atomic devastation unless demands for the genetic legacy of legendary warrior Big Boss are met. Infiltrating solo with scant equipment, Snake navigates a labyrinthine facility teeming with surveillance, guards, and lethal traps. He encounters a rogues gallery of specialized foes: mind-reading Psycho Mantis, revolver-spinning Revolver Ocelot, camouflage decoy Octopus, sharpshooting Sniper Wolf, machine gun-toting Vulcan Raven, and the mysterious Cyborg Ninja. Meanwhile, allies like TechWiz Otacon and love interest Meryl provide intel via codec. At stake is Metal Gear Rex, a revolutionary bipedal tank enabling stealth nuclear launches. Metal Gear Solid aptly examines the perils of nuclear proliferation, genetic predetermination, and warfare's dehumanizing cycle. The codec system in Metal Gear Solid allows for extensive dialogue and world building, giving characters insight into the characters' backstories and motivations without disrupting gameplay. And the creative use of fourth wall breaks, like Psycho Mantis reading the player's controller inputs, creates a unique narrative experience that blurs the line between game and reality. Director Hideo Kojima talked about the game's complex world while it was still in development, saying, "The story for Metal Gear is very complicated, so I think cutscenes will be necessary. The one thing I want to avoid, though, are those tedious scenes where characters are just blabbering at each other for 4 or 5 minutes. I've got backstories for these characters that cover their whole lives, from the moment they were born to their current situation, but probably only 1/3 of that will make it into the game." In the kingdom of Hyrule, beset by unexplained plagues and droughts, a wizard named Aghanim emerges to quell the crises with magic, only to seize control and begin abducting maidens descended from ancient sages to dismantle a mystical seal. Young orphan Link awakens to a stormy night and a psychic cry from imprisoned Princess Zelda, urging him to rescue her from the castle depths. Armed with his uncle's sword, he frees her and flees to safety, learning of the legendary Master Sword hidden in the woods, wieldable only by a proven hero who gathers the 3 pendants of virtue from perilous shrines. As Link braves forests, villages, and mountains to claim them, Aghanim strikes again, banishing Zelda to the Dark World, a corrupted and monstrous parallel realm. Drawn into this shadow domain, Link must liberate the scattered maidens from warped dungeons and challenge the encroaching evil. The dual world mechanic of The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, where Link travels between the light and dark worlds, creates a unique narrative structure that ties the story's progression to the player's exploration of mirrored realities. This innovative use of parallel worlds allows for intricate puzzle solving and environmental storytelling, as actions in one world directly impact the other, deepening the narrative experience. The game's use of the Master Sword as a central narrative symbol ties Link's personal growth to his quest, emphasizing themes of courage and destiny in a natural and engaging way. Miyamoto has talked about the unique blending of game mechanics and character development they were aiming for. It has everything that's good about an RPG. It's interesting to hear my players bragging about how they got this armor or that tunic, so they didn't take any damage. It means they're really attached to their character. The main theme of the game is for the player to be able to feel as though they're doing everything themselves. Widower Harry Mason crashes his Jeep near the quiet resort town of Silent Hill while vacationing with his adopted 7-year-old daughter Cheryl, who vanishes amid the wreckage. Disoriented by thick fog, Harry pursues fleeting glimpses of her through desolate streets patrolled by nightmarish, malformed creatures that emerge with a blaring siren. He allies with skeptical cop Sybil Bennett, who questions the town's abandonment, and encounters cryptic residents like fervent occultist Dahlia Gillespie, who alludes to a secretive cult and a child suffering tied to divine resurrection. Navigating rusted alternate realms via schools, amusement parks, and hospitals riddled with clues, Harry unravels layers of ritualistic abuse, hallucinogenic drugs, and suppressed memories. Central ideas probe paternal desperation against manifesting inner demons, the erosion of sanity and isolation, occult influences that warp normalcy, and subconscious guilt materializing as tangible dread in a once idyllic American locale. There's a sense of disorientation in Silent Hill that parallels the protagonist's unraveling psyche as details emerge piecemeal through scattered memos, symbolic imagery, and environmental shifts. Soundscapes of grating metal and static warnings heighten the realism, and these auditory cues link to the thematic undercurrents of hidden trauma. Director Keiichiro Toyama explained the give and take of the puzzle-driven story, noting, "We have adjusted the scenario and the plot to make room for creative puzzles. Actually, the story itself is a puzzle, so we want you to imagine a lot of stuff when you first clear the game." In the medieval kingdom of Ivalice, ravaged by the 50 Years' War against neighboring Ordalia, peace brings economic strife and class tensions between nobles and commoners. Young noble Ramza Beolv from the prestigious House Beolv serves in the Northern Sky Knights alongside his childhood friend Delita Hyral, a commoner risen through patronage. As succession disputes erupt after the king's death, rival dukes vie for the throne through proxy wars, manipulating the church's Zodiac Brave legend, a myth of heroes wielding magical stones to vanquish evil. Ramza witnesses betrayals, uncovers conspiracies involving demonic forces and ecclesiastical corruption, and questions loyalties amid shifting alliances. Underlying currents explore social inequality, the manipulation of history by the victors, and the personal costs of idealism in a broken society. The story of Final Fantasy Tactics intricately weaves political intrigue and class conflict, using a historical lens inspired by real-life wars to explore themes of betrayal and power struggles. Its non-linear narrative, delivered through detailed cutscenes and dialogue, allows players to uncover the complex motivations of characters across multiple factions. The game's use of the morally ambiguous protagonist Ramza challenges players to question loyalty and justice in a way that deepens the storytelling experience. Director Yasumi Matsuno said in a 1998 interview, "The story is based on real historical events like the War of the Roses. I wanted to show the complexity of human nature, where no one is purely good or evil." On the war-torn continent of Ignis, where two nations clash endlessly with massive mechanized suits called gears, young painter Fei Fong Wang dwells in the serene village of Lahan. A tragic raid awakens destructive powers within him, forcing him to flee and seek answers about his elusive memories. Accompanied by wise physician Satan Uzuki and soldier Ellie Van Houten, Fei traverses vast terrains from sun-scorched deserts and submerged ruins to hovering metropolises, gathering allies like the pirate Bart and android Emeralda. Together they unearth millennia-old enigmas tied to ancient godlike entities. Xenogears intricately weaves psychological and philosophical themes, drawing heavily from Jungian psychology and Gnosticism to explore identity and existential purpose through its characters. Its use of religious symbolism, particularly from Christianity and Judaism, creates a complex narrative that challenges players to interpret layered allegories. The game's ambitious scope delivers a deeply interconnected world where character motivations and plot twists hinge on metaphysical concepts like reincarnation and collective consciousness. Co-writer Soraya Saga explained the interesting origins of Xenogears in a 2010 interview, recalling, "I and Tetsuya Takahashi originally submitted it as a script idea for Final Fantasy VII. While we were told that it was too dark and complicated for a fantasy, the boss was kind enough to give Takahashi a chance to launch a new project. Then Takahashi and I wrote up the full screenplay, which contained cutscene dialogues in final form, thus the project was born." In the scorched remnants of Southern California, 84 years after thermonuclear war obliterated civilization, an inhabitant of sheltered Vault 13 is chosen to venture into the hostile wasteland to replace a failing water chip, essential for the community's survival. Navigating irradiated deserts, ramshackle towns like Shady Sands and Junktown, and fortified bunkers, the Vault Dweller encounters disparate survivors, the tech-hoarding Brotherhood of Steel, ruthless raiders, ghastly mutants, and opportunistic traders. Alliances form or dissolve based on choices, uncovering remnants of pre-war Vault-Tec experiments, corporate greed, and military folly that precipitated the apocalypse. Players explore ideas like humanity's resilience amid ruin, the moral ambiguities of rebuilding society, the perils of unchecked technology, and personal transformation in a retro-futuristic hellscape laced with dark irony and fragile hope. Fallout features a morally complex story where player choices significantly shape the narrative, allowing for multiple endings based on decisions like siding with different factions or resolving conflicts through diplomacy, stealth, or violence. Its use of a retro-futuristic post-apocalyptic setting combined with dark humor and social commentary creates a distinctive tone that immerses players in a world of ethical dilemmas and sheer survival. The special system, which governs character stats and skills, integrates seamlessly with the story, giving players unique ways to influence outcomes through their characters' abilities. Co-creator Tim Kaine said in 2012, "Fallout was a post-nuclear world, a product of governments lying to each other and their constituency, so of course political comments are going to be made by the characters. And in its lawless environment, people are going to act more towards their baser natures, so we have an opportunity to explore that." In a verdant world nurtured by the ethereal energy of mana, a curious boy named Randy stumbles upon a rusted sword lodged in a stone waterfall basin near his village. Drawing it forth to clear a path, he inadvertently weakens the global mana flow, unleashing sealed monsters and drawing the attention of ambitious empires hungry for its power. Banished as a harbinger of doom, Randy sets out to rekindle the sword's might by locating 8 elemental seeds guarded in distant realms. Allied with feisty runaway Prim, driven by romance and rebellion, and impish sprite Popoi, who's lost and memory fogged, they battle mechanized armies, feral abominations, and arcane warlords. The story of Secret of Mana stands out for its dynamic use of 3 playable characters, whose distinct personalities and backstories combine to drive the narrative, creating a sense of camaraderie that shapes player choices and interactions. The game's inclusion of the mana tree as a central, almost mythic force ties the story to broader environmental themes, giving the plot a signature ecological undertone somewhat common in 90s JRPGs. Additionally, the real-time dialogue system where characters banter during gameplay adds a layer of immersion that makes the story feel alive and responsive. Hiromichi Tanaka, the game's producer, said in 1993, "The story originally was just a simple one about bravery, love, wisdom, stuff like that. To that base, we worked in the larger world and setting of mana. We felt we could make something really interesting by weaving the two together." Director Koichi Ishii added, "As a symbol, it's something I've had in my head for a long time, since the beginning of the Final Fantasy series. Something that would be the source of all magic, the source of all life energy. Without mana, no one could use magic or see imaginary creatures like fairies. Basically, it's kind of like the source of everything existing, and it takes different shape depending on whether we're talking about the planet life or individual people. In my mind, mana would be the entity that unifies everything." In the militaristic kingdom of Baron, Dark Knight Cecil Harvey leads the elite Red Wings airship fleet, but questions his sovereign's escalating aggression, exemplified by a brutal raid on Mysidia to seize its water crystal. Relieved of command for his doubts, Cecil embarks with loyal Dragoon Kane Highwind on a mission to Myst Village that unleashes devastation, sparing only child summoner Rydia among the ruins. Driven by guilt, Cecil ascends Mount Ordeals to reclaim his honor as a paladin, forging uneasy pacts with a rotating cadre of companions. Together, they defy the masked warlord Golbez, who covets elemental crystals to summon primordial forces, voyaging across seas, caverns, and lunar expanses. The story of Final Fantasy IV hinges on fluid party changes that underscore impermanence, with members joining or departing to heighten stakes through sacrifice and reunion. Flashbacks and confessions peel back origins, fostering attachment to the cast of characters as motivations intersect with the kingdom's broader crises, and the game's narrative integration of character-specific abilities like Cecil's Dark Knight skills, or Rosa's healing magic, makes it feel as if each character's role shapes key plot moments. Director Takashi Takita reflected in a 2011 interview, "Yes, the story-driven part was the main component. The fact that we focused on the characters' stories first and laid those down initially, and then, after we had that finalized, added the variety on top. And for Final Fantasy IV, because for each of the characters you know the country they came from, and their backgrounds and how they grew up, it gives you more of an ability to relate to each of the characters." In the wake of the Empire's fall, mercenary Kyle Katarn uncovers his Force potential after Dark Jedi Jarek murders his father Morgan for clues to the Valley of the Jedi, a potent Force nexus. Guided by Jedi spirit Ku Ran, Kyle retrieves a vital data disk from droid 8T88 on Nar Shaddah's shadowy streets, deciphers a hidden map in his Sulan homestead, and claims Ran's lightsaber. With ally Jan Ors, he pursues Jarek's acolytes through urban sprawls, fuel depots, and ancient ruins, mastering Force powers amid temptations of darkness. The morality system in Star Wars Jedi Knight Dark Forces II allows players to shape Kyle Katarn's alignment with the light or dark side of the Force through choices, impacting abilities and story outcomes. This system integrates live-action cutscenes that shift based on player decisions, creating an especially compelling narrative experience. The game's use of full-motion video for storytelling adds a lot to making players feel like they've truly stepped into the Star Wars universe. Project leader Justin Chin commented on the mysterious force that drives both the story and gameplay of Jedi Knight Dark Forces 2, saying, "The Force plays an integral role in how the player plays the game and shapes the way the game is played." In the secluded library fortress of Candlekeep along the Sword Coast, amid a mysterious iron crisis causing weapons and tools to crumble, the protagonist, an orphan raised by the sage Gorion, is thrust into danger when Gorion is killed in an ambush during their sudden flight. Joined by childhood friend Imoen, the protagonist ventures forth to investigate the crisis, recruiting a diverse party of companions while navigating bandit-infested roads, political intrigue involving the Iron Throne, and the Flaming Fist's enforcement. As he or she traverses forests, mines, and cities, discoveries of personal heritage linked to divine legacies emerge. Alongside the corruption of power, moral choices in alignment with good or evil, and bonds formed in adversity against looming threats of war and scarcity. Baldur's Gate's story stands out for its deep integration of Dungeons & Dragons lore, particularly the Forgotten Realms setting, which gives the narrative a rich, immersive backdrop. Its non-linear storytelling allows players to explore the Sword Coast freely, with choices impacting character interactions and quest outcomes in meaningful ways. The companion system, where NPCs like Imoen and Minsk have distinct personalities and backstories, adds a level of emotional investment that encourages replayability. Writer Lucas Christiansen said in a 2018 interview with The Ringer, "It's all in character. That was what we really realized early on. The fun of D&D is the controlled chaos of the party, the different personalities. Not just a pile of skills you throw at monsters, but the personalities that clash or flow with the story based on what you choose to do and who you choose to do it with." The Nameless One awakens on a mortuary slab in Sigil, the City of Doors, a hub of infinite planes where belief shapes reality and factions clash over philosophy. Scarred, tattooed, and amnesiac, he learns of his cursed immortality. Death revives him, stripping memories anew. Directed by etchings on his back to seek a lost journal, he navigates Sigil's wards, underworld hives, and outer realms, recruiting tormented allies. A wisecracking floating skull with hidden loyalties. A Githzerai warrior bound by unbreakable vows. A chaste succubus healer grappling with temptation, and others scarred by past encounters. The dialogue-heavy Planescape Torment features significant philosophical depth, exploring themes of identity, morality, and redemption through the Nameless One's quest to uncover his past. Like in Baldur's Gate, player choices shape the protagonist's moral alignment and relationships, creating a deeply personal experience. The game's writing blends dark humor, existential questions, and rich character interactions deftly. Designer Chris Avallone said while discussing his personal vision for the game, "I had a long list of things I wanted to do with an RPG and a long list of things I hated about RPGs when Planescape rolled around. So that all added fuel to the fire. I started with all the elements I hated, cut those out. No halflings, dwarves, elves, evil wizards, no saving the kingdom, no swords, no attempt to make the undead scary, reloading after death, regimented class system, and predetermined alignment. And added stuff I'd always wanted to do. Puritan succubus, making the dead more sympathetic, dungeons in a pocket, selfish main quest, fragmented personality of main character, pregnant alleys." Shipwrecked on the shores of the Iliac Bay amid the rival kingdoms of Daggerfall, Sentinel, and Wayrest, the player arrives as an agent of Emperor Uriel Septim VII. Entrusted with appeasing the vengeful ghost of slain King Lysandus, whose spectral army haunts his former domain, and locating a vanished imperial letter meant for a blade operative in Daggerfall's court. Entangled in fractious alliances with noble houses, merchant princes, religious orders, and enigmatic figures like the Underking or Orc leader Gortwog, the protagonist maneuvers through espionage, ancient prophecies, and recovered artifacts that could reshape regional dominance. In The Elder Scrolls II: Daggerfall, recurring motifs address the volatility of political loyalty in a divided land, the weight of historical grievances on current ambitions, the intersection of personal honor with broader machinations, and the precarious balance between mortal schemes and otherworldly forces in a sprawling, unpredictable realm. Branching paths through factional quests interlock personal agency with geopolitical tensions, where choices ripple through kingdoms via letters, rumors, and encounters that expose hidden motives. Multiple outcomes hinge on alliances formed or broken, integrating role-playing mechanics like reputation and skills directly into narrative progression for emergent depth. Lead designer Ted Peterson admitted in a 2021 interview, "Really the goal on Daggerfall was to say, because I know I read enough reviews where they're like, what a terrible writer came up with this story. I was like, oh, I'm gonna show them that I can write. So I'm gonna write something super complicated and with lots of different factions vying for power and multiple endings and lots of plate spinning. And I think I probably went overboard with that. It takes a long time to explain Daggerfall's storyline." In the Borderlands, between the Kingdom of Highland and the City-States Alliance of Joustin, teenage soldiers Ryu and his best friend Joey Atreides survive a brutal ambush that frames their Unicorn Youth Brigade for a massacre orchestrated by Highland's ruthless Prince Luca Blight. Fleeing as fugitives, Ryu inherits the Bright Shield rune, a true rune symbolizing protection, while Joey bears its counterpart, the Black Sword rune of Judgment. Ryu emerges as reluctant leader of a burgeoning resistance, recruiting 108 Stars of Destiny, warriors, scholars, merchants, and outcasts from diverse corners to build an army and a castle stronghold. Allies like strategist Shu, swordsman Flick, and bear-like Victor join the fray against Highland's invasion, navigating sieges, espionage, and rune-fueled sorcery. Suikoden II allows players to recruit a massive 108 unique characters, each with distinct backstories and interactions that deepen the narrative and create a very real sense of a living world. This system ties directly to the story's theme of unity as the protagonist builds his army. The game's use of multiple perspectives, including occasional control of the antagonist, adds complexity to the story by showing conflicting motivations that go beyond relying on a single viewpoint. Director Yoshitaka Murayama spoke about the inspiration for the story, saying, "For Suikoden II, we used a Chinese story about dueling heroes called White Vengeance as a motif. In that story, one hero is really strong, but he's not very smart. The other is a bit weaker, but he's smarter. The smarter one is able to overcome the stronger one. That was the inspiration for the story of Joey and the hero." In the first game, I didn't really have the space to do much with the 108 characters, so this time I wanted to flesh out the story and the characters a bit more. In autumnal Paris, American tourist George Staubert survives a cafe bombing by a clown-costumed assassin who steals a briefcase from his victim. Intrigued, George teams up with sharp-witted French photojournalist Nico Collard to trace the killer, unraveling clues tied to medieval manuscripts and cryptic symbols. Their pursuit reveals a shadowy Neo-Templar order seeking a legendary artifact of immense power, drawing them across Europe and the Middle East, from Irish villages and Syrian bazaars to Spanish estates and Scottish ruins. Echoes of Crusader history combined with modern intrigue, probing hidden legacies, forgotten oaths, and the allure of unearthed secrets amid globe-trotting escapades. Broken Sword's settings ground historical allusions in tangible details like Parisian alleys or ancient digs, turning locales into extensions of unfolding mysteries. Humorous asides punctuate the story's suspense, humanizing allies and foes alike, as voice performances capture subtle tensions that propel momentum. Charles Cecil, the director of Broken Sword, reflected on the balance between gameplay and story in the game in a 2009 Guardian interview. An adventure game requires the narrative and the puzzles to be written in parallel since they interlink so extensively, each driving the other. Ultimately, the puzzle mechanism must come first, since people won't get to experience the narrative if they don't like the interface. But the narrative must then drive the player to want to continue. Clearly, the narrative and the mechanics have a totally symbiotic relationship. Born to wandering warrior Pankraz and his wife Madalena in the kingdom of Gotha, the young hero travels with his father across seas and lands, forging bonds with childhood friend Bianca, taming a saber cat cub, and witnessing royal intrigues. But tragedy befalls him when villains murder Pankraz, enslaving the hero for years in a distant temple under tyrannical overseers. Escaping as an adult, he reclaims his lineage, chooses a bride, either Bianca or noble Nera, and sires twins fated for pivotal roles. The family ventures through castles, villages, and monster-infested wilds, recruiting beasts as allies while pursuing Zenithian artifacts to thwart encroaching darkness. The generational storytelling of Dragon Quest V, spanning 3 distinct phases of the hero's life, creates a deeply emotional narrative structure that intertwines personal growth with epic adventure. Evolving relationships from paternal guidance to spousal partnership and child-rearing infuse the story with emotional continuity. Monster taming merges gameplay with narrative kinship, transforming battles into extensions of loyalties gathered over time. And dialogue minimalism amplifies key events like losses and reunions, letting actions convey depth and attachment to the silent protagonist and his companions. Writing for RPG Fan in a 2009 interview, Patrick Gann noted, "The impact of the story is found in the loss and subsequent reunion of different family members. The familial plot is simple yet powerful." In a dystopian near future where anti-grav hovercrafts threaten to obsolete motorized vehicles, grizzled biker Ben Throttle leads the Polecats gang on an open highway. When aging motorcycle mogul Malcolm Corley recruits them as escorts to his company's shareholder meeting, scheming Vice President Adrian Ripberger ambushes Ben, framing him for murder to seize control and pivot production to minivans. Awakening battered, Ben races to reunite with his gang, ally with tough mechanic Maureen, and unravel the conspiracy through brawls, high-speed chases, and demolition derbies across dusty Badlands. The story of Full Throttle is celebrated for its gritty cinematic style, blending biker culture with a dystopian sci-fi edge, following Ben Throttle as he unravels a corporate conspiracy threatening his biker gang. Its unique mix of noir-style storytelling, memorable characters, and sharp dialogue delivered through LucasArts' signature point-and-click adventure format has been widely praised for immersing players in a vivid, rebellious world. LucasArts designer Tim Schafer commented in a 2017 PC Gamer interview, "It's so tempting when writing a story to have the world be in danger. It's a workable plot device. But biker culture is kind of nihilistic, so I thought about what would end the world of a biker. And that would be if the only maker of motorcycles in the country switched over to making hovering minivans. It would be such an affront to everything they believe in." We were definitely inspired by Mad Max, but not in the sense that the world's a wasteland. It was mainly the stoicism of Max as this tough guy hero. He's capable and smart, but calm and quiet too. He's not looking for trouble, but it always finds him. Ryu, the last of the brood with dragon transformation abilities, is discovered as a baby by miners and raised by thieves Ray and Tipo. They steal from a corrupt mayor, leading to an attack by mercenaries Balio and Sunder, separating the group. Ryu, now with Nina, a winged princess, and Momo, an inventor, faces various challenges, including arena battles and encounters with Gar, a warrior tied to the brood's history. As Ryu grows, he learns of the brood's extermination by the goddess Miria, who seeks to control humanity's fate. The party, including Peko, a nature-connected creature, and Rei, reunites to uncover Miria's motives, traveling through diverse lands and facing trials. Key themes include identity, family, and the balance between protection and freedom as Ryu seeks to understand his heritage and his destiny. Breath of Fire 3 is lauded for its innovative master system, which ties directly into the story by allowing characters to apprentice under various masters to learn unique skills, reflecting the game's theme of personal growth and discovery. This system, combined with the narrative's focus on Ryu's dragon heritage, creates a dynamic storytelling experience where player choices in mentorship shape both character development and the emotional depth of the journey. The inclusion of this mechanic with the story was widely praised for adding a layer of strategic role-playing that felt personal and impactful. A year before release, director Makoto Ikehara commented on the strategy behind the writing of the game, saying, "You know how the Breath of Fire games feature a mute protagonist, right? I mean the Dragon Quest style hero who doesn't talk. The challenge with using that kind of protagonist is that because he can't talk, without a good hook in the beginning of the game to draw players in, it's much harder to explain the world and story. The way we create the story even. It's not something we refine and rework obsessively. We first sketch out a fairly rough outline, then if we can connect some interesting dialogue from the town NPCs up with that larger story idea, then we feel like we're getting somewhere." Set years after the Terran-Kilrathi War, Colonel Christopher Blair retires to a quiet farming existence on Nefel II, only to be recalled by Admiral Jeffrey Tolwyn amid border skirmishes between the Terran Confederation and the Union of Border Worlds. Assigned to the TCS Lexington under Captain William Eisen, Blair probes mysterious raids by unmarked fighters wielding a devastating new weapon. Facing charges of defection after a tense standoff, he aligns with the Border Worlds militia aboard the BWS Intrepid, rallying pilots like Maniac and new allies to expose a shadowy cabal inciting conflict for ulterior motives. Branching dialogues and choices shape crew dynamics and paths, delving into post-war disillusionment, fractured allegiances, the ethics of authority, and vigilance's toll on personal freedom in a fragile armistice. Wing Commander 4: The Price of Freedom is renowned for its groundbreaking use of live-action, full-motion video cutscenes, featuring high-profile actors like Mark Hamill to deliver a cinematic story experience. This ambitious approach, blending interactive gameplay with Hollywood-style production, was widely praised for immersing players in a morally complex narrative about loyalty and the cost of war. The game's high-budget FMV sequences, costing over $12 million, set a new standard for storytelling in video games at the time. Looking back on the Wing Commander series, creator Chris Roberts has said, "With its cinematic quality, clearly developed storylines, and well-known actors, the Wing Commander series created a whole new genre within the gaming industry known as the interactive movie. Officially, I described it as World War II in space." In the vibrant port town of Parm, energetic youngster Justin, inspired by his vanished father's adventuring tales, obtains a glowing spirit stone that projects images of the Icarian civilization long thought extinct. With tomboy companion Sue and her fluffy pet Puffy, he stows away to the pioneering city of New Parm, recruiting daring explorer Fina along the way. Exploring expansive seas, rugged frontiers, and arcane relics, they dodge the iron-fisted Garlisle forces commanded by General Bale and his heir Mullen. Grandia is well liked for its innovative sense of wonder storytelling approach, which infuses the narrative with a youthful, adventurous spirit through the eyes of Justin as he embarks on a grand journey of discovery. The game's vibrant world, filled with diverse cultures and ancient mysteries, is brought to life through dynamic dialogue and character interactions that emphasize optimism and exploration, earning praise for its heartfelt and immersive tone. Director Takeshi Miyagi explained the world-building focus in an interview. "One fundamental element of our planning design for Grandia was to create an RPG that has never been done before. To that end, the first thing we worked on was depicting characters that felt like living, breathing humans. We really wanted players to feel like they're adventuring through a world where human beings actually live. With that concept in place, we then proceeded to flesh out the story and characters. The story of Grandia doesn't begin with a save the world trope. In fact, the story doesn't really start developing in that direction until the second disc. The first disc gives players time to get thoroughly acquainted with the characters and the game world." In the remote Kaprulu sector, exiled human Terrans originally from Earth have formed fractious societies, with the dominant Terran Confederacy enforcing control through military might and psychic ghost operatives. Tensions rise as the voracious Zerg swarm, a hive-minded collective of bioengineered horrors driven to assimilate superior genetics, invades Terran colonies. The ancient Protoss, telepathic warriors with advanced warp technology, respond by scorching infested worlds to contain the threat, igniting clashes with Terrans caught in the crossfire. Figures like the idealistic Marshal Jim Raynor, ambitious revolutionary Arcturus Mengsk, and elite agent Sarah Kerrigan navigate shifting loyalties amid escalating warfare. Protoss leaders Tassadar and Zeratul grapple with rigid hierarchies while uncovering deeper cosmic forces. StarCraft portrays the fragility of alliances forged in desperation in a thought-provoking way. The corruption of power through betrayal and experimentation, evolutionary imperatives clashing with technological dominance, and humanity's precarious place in an unforgiving galaxy teeming with existential perils. StarCraft was well received by both gamers and critics for its compelling integration of three distinct faction narratives, Terran, Zerg, and Protoss, each with unique perspectives and motivations, creating a richly layered story experience. This approach, delivered through mission briefings as well as in-game dialogue, has made StarCraft a classic in the RTS genre, praised for its balance and ability to immerse players in a morally complex sci-fi universe without favoring one race over another. Blizzard writer Chris Metzen described the setting in a 2007 MTV interview, saying, "StarCraft is a science fiction universe. Essentially, it's a story about three races in contention. You got the Terrans, there's a bunch of criminal exiles from Earth, and what's happening recently in the continuity is two mighty alien forces have come in, the Zerg and the Protoss. The Zerg are a nightmare, they are out to devour all life and conquer the universe. The Protoss, on the other hand, they are kind of protectors of the universe, so they come to fight the Zerg back, and humanity is kind of caught in the middle." In the idyllic archipelago of El Nido, young villager Serge slips into a parallel dimension where his own grave marks a decade-old death. Shunned as a specter, he joins forces with the plucky thief Kid to probe the rift, wielding a mysterious swallow weapon and recruiting eclectic allies from both worlds, misfit warriors, mystical beings, and quirky locals. Traveling across sun-drenched beaches, lush forests, and enigmatic ruins, they confront shadowy antagonists like the panther-like Lynx, and unravel threads connecting human ambition, draconic guardians, and the planet's vital energies. Alternate histories probe notions of existence, environmental symbiosis, and the fluidity of the self across diverging paths. The most intriguing aspect of Chrono Cross's story is its innovative use of a parallel world system, where players navigate between two distinct dimensions with subtle differences in characters and environments. This mechanic has been widely praised for its creative approach to storytelling, allowing players to explore how choices and events ripple across alternate realities. The game's complex character roster with over 40 recruitable party members also stands out, as each has unique backstories that enrich the multiverse theme. Masato Kato, scenario writer, explained his intent with Chrono Cross, commenting, "We didn't want to directly extend Chrono Trigger into a sequel, but create a new Chrono with a new taste while preserving the atmosphere of the previous title." Without revealing any more of Chrono Cross's excellent storyline, it can be said that it successfully pulls off the difficult balancing act every sequel faces. In the quaint village of Berg, young Alex idolizes the legendary Dragon Master Dyne and yearns for grand exploits beyond his simple life. Joined by his nurturing childhood companion Luna, who possesses a gift for song and healing, chatty flying cat Null, and ambitious merchant heir Ramus, Alex sets off on a seemingly modest quest to claim a fabled diamond from a nearby cave. There, they encounter the wise white dragon Quark, who senses Alex's latent potential and tasks him with undergoing rigorous trials to assume the mantle of Dragon Master, sworn guardian of the benevolent goddess Althena and her harmonious world. As the path expands to bustling cities like Meribia and remote outposts, the group recruits allies including boastful mage Nash, elegant heiress Mia, roguish fighter Kyle, and spirited priestess Jessica. Together they navigate a vibrant realm, blending magic, ancient lore, and human ambition, facing tests that probe bonds of camaraderie and budding romance. The story of Lunar, the Silver Star, is notable for its innovative use of the Sega CD's capabilities, featuring roughly 15 minutes of spoken dialogue and anime-style cutscenes that were groundbreaking for the time, bringing players into its fantasy world in a way few other RPGs could match. The narrative's emotional depth, particularly the evolving relationship between Alex and Luna, was praised for its sincerity, setting it apart from typical RPG tropes with a heartfelt focus on love and loyalty. Critics have lauded the English localization by working designs, which infuse the dialogue with humor and personality, making the characters and their interactions especially memorable. Scenario lead Kei Shigema said in an interview on release, "From the get-go, we decided that we didn't want our protagonist to be a killer. It felt wrong to us, the notion of a boy setting out on a great adventure and then ending up killing people. That decision had a huge effect on the overall atmosphere of the world." Producer Kazunari Tomi agreed. "Yes, the overall style of Lunar is light, as you say, but it was always meant to be a backdrop for the drama between the characters that would unfold. Within this light-hearted atmosphere, we wanted to tell a moving, dramatic story." At the remote Black Mesa Research Facility, theoretical physicist Gordon Freeman begins a shift in the Anomalous Materials Lab, assisting with an experiment on a mysterious extraterrestrial crystal. A sudden resonance cascade tears open portals to the border world Zen, unleashing aggressive alien species that infest the complex, turning corridors and labs into battlegrounds. Scientists and security scramble amid the invasion, but a military cleanup crew arrives to suppress the outbreak and eliminate survivors to conceal it. Freeman, clad in a protective HEV suit, scavenges weapons and traverses the sprawling underground network of offices, reactors, and silos, allying fleetingly with others while evading threats. The most interesting aspect of Half-Life's story is its innovative use of environmental storytelling, where the narrative unfolds through scripted events, level design, and NPC interactions rather than cutscenes, immersing players in Gordon Freeman's perspective. This approach, praised for its seamless integration, made the Black Mesa facility feel alive and dynamic, setting a new standard for first-person shooter narratives. Writer Mark Laidlaw reflected in a 1998 post-mortem, "As a novelist myself, I hoped that I could provide some guidance to a team that was already well on the way to creating what had been from the beginning an ambitious game of great promise and epic scope. The narrative had to be baked into the corridors." Additionally, in a Lightspeed magazine interview, he said, "Half-Life was conceived as a horror first, and always intended to be scary above all else. The atmosphere shaded towards dark, dystopian sci-fi in Half-Life 2, but in Half-Life 1 we treated the game as a technological gothic, with Black Mesa playing the role of the spooky old castle." The Avatar emerges intrinsic through a red moon gate greeted by a gruesome ritual murder that shakes the once peaceful Britannia. Old friends Iolo, Shamino, and Dupree join to probe the crime, pointing suspicions at the Fellowship, a widespread society preaching unity, trust, and worthiness under charismatic leader Batlin. Traveling familiar yet altered lands from bustling Britain to remote isles, they uncover ties to eerie black rock generators fueling madness, hallucinations, and societal decay. Ultima 7, The Black Gate, features a deep integration of player choice and moral ambiguity, allowing players to shape the narrative through decisions that impact the game world and its characters. The game's use of a dynamic, living world where NPCs follow schedules and react to player actions creates an immersive storytelling experience that was groundbreaking for 1992. Fans of the series appreciated this level of interactivity, noting it set a new standard for RPG narratives. Raymond Benson, lead writer, reflected on the story of Ultima 7 in a 2013 interview, saying, "So I came up with the murder mystery plot, in which the Avatar has to solve that murder in the barn at the beginning of the game, which leads to the ultimate quest of taking down the Fellowship. In many ways, it's a formulaic James Bond plot. The Avatar has to use cunning and skill to investigate the mysterious organization, uncover its devious plot, travel to the main hideout, and confront the leader." In the coastal village of South Cape, young Will resides with his grandparents after mysteriously returning alone from his father's ill-fated expedition to the Tower of Babel. Gifted with psychokinesis, Will enjoys time with close friends Eric, Lance, Seth, and Lily. When rebellious Princess Kara hides in his home to escape her confining royal life, they're drawn into a worldwide journey after fleeing the king's pursuit. Collecting mystic statues from ancient wonders like the Incan Gold Ship, Nazca Plains, Angkor Wat, the Great Wall, and Mu, Will unlocks transformations into Mighty Knight Freedan and Ethereal Shadow to battle threats. Companions join and part amid the trials of exploring lost civilizations' enigmas. The story of Illusion of Gaia has a unique blend of historical and mystical elements, seamlessly weaving real-world ancient civilizations like the Incas and the Nazca into a fantastical narrative involving cosmic forces and spiritual evolution. This fusion creates a thought-provoking experience that elevates the game beyond typical action RPGs. Critics at the time, and even looking back retrospectively, have praised this ambitious storytelling for its emotional depth and philosophical undertones. In a 1995 interview, director Masaya Hashimoto contrasted the story with the studio Quintet's first outing a couple years earlier, saying, "Take ActRaiser and Illusion of Gaia. They exist at opposite ends of the spectrum. In the ActRaiser games, it's entirely about creation, about the process of building and making things. In Illusion of Gaia, the theme is destruction and how things fall apart." In the modest village of El Cid, young swordsman Maxim supports himself by hunting beasts that plague the lands. A mysterious seer named Iris arrives, prophesying his pivotal role in averting catastrophe from the Sinistrals, omnipotent entities embodying destruction, chaos, death, and terror, who aim to subjugate the mortals. Accompanied by Tia, a devoted merchant harboring deeper feelings, burly fighter Guy, and others, Maxim ventures across bustling ports, forgotten shrines, and treacherous caverns. Harnessing the mythic dual blade, they decode ancient omens and rally forces against the looming divine incursion. Lufia 2, Rise of the Sinistrals, is remembered for its innovative storytelling approach, particularly its use of non-linear narrative that weaves together past and present events to deepen the emotional impact of the characters' relationships. The game's Ancient Cave, a roguelike dungeon integrated into the story, is uniquely praised for blending narrative progression with challenging randomized gameplay, creating a memorable and replayable experience. This cave is seen as a standout feature, seamlessly tying the story's themes of legacy and sacrifice to its mechanics. Composer Yasunori Shiono commented in a 2016 interview, "The story for Lufia 2 was a major upgrade from the previous game, so I felt the music had to match those ambitions. I think it's the characters for sure. They're very colorful. The way your party changes and morphs as the story progresses makes for a very colorful and unique game, I think." In the shadowed expanse of Dracula's resurrected castle, Alucard, the Dampier son of the infamous Count, awakens from voluntary slumber to confront the recurring nightmare. 4 years after Richter Belmont's triumph over Dracula, the fortress materializes anew, with Richter mysteriously absent. Alucard penetrates the labyrinthine edifice, harnessing both innate powers and unearthed artifacts, while allying with figures like Maria Renard amid hordes of nightmarish foes. Delving into inverted corridors and hidden chambers, he unravels manipulations by sinister entities, exploring legacies of cursed lineage, internal duality between light and shadow, and the perpetual cycle of darkness threatening humanity's fragile peace. Castlevania Symphony of the Night's story has a non-linear narrative structure which allows players to explore Dracula's castle freely, uncovering story elements through environmental storytelling and item discoveries. This approach, combined with the series' deep lore inspired by gothic horror and vampire mythology, creates an immersive experience that was widely praised for its depth and replayability back in 1997. This remains true to this day, and the integration of RPG elements such as character progression and dialogue with key characters like Maria and Richter further enriches the storytelling, making it a classic story-driven platformer. Director, programmer, and scenario writer Koji Igarashi has given some insights into the opposing forces in the game, saying, "Symphony is the story of Richter as well as the story of Dracula. The theme of Richter's story is one fights to live, he doesn't live to fight, while Dracula's theme is that mankind is the cause of their own destruction, so nothing is wrong at all." In the subterranean village of Krista, mischievous boy Ark opens a forbidden box, freezing his fellow villagers in crystal. Guided by the village elder, he ventures to the barren surface world to resurrect it. Conquering 5 towers, Ark revives the continents, then restores life sequentially. Plants through the great tree Ra, birds, winds, animals, and finally humanity. As societies form and technologies advance, Ark fosters their evolution from primitive tribes to modern innovations. He awakens scientist Baruga, whose utopian visions conceal sinister methods like viral control and zombification. Manipulated by hidden entities, Ark meets the sage Kumari, who instructs him to collect starstones to challenge his orchestrated fate. Terranigma's story involves a unique blend of creation and resurrection themes, where Ark actively participates in reviving the world's continents and life forms, reflecting a deep philosophical exploration of life, death, and rebirth. This narrative mechanic, tied to a real-time world-building gameplay, contributed to the game's reputation for storytelling innovation, creating a sense of agency that resonated strongly with players. Reiko Takabayashi, writer for Terranigma, has explained the complex ecological message of the game, saying, "In writing the scenarios, I always had that duality foremost in my mind. I wanted players to ask themselves, for example, if it's really right to develop this town where it will destroy the natural habitat of these birds, etc." Prince Alexander of Daventry pines for Princess Cosima, the girl in the tower, glimpsed in a magic mirror from the distant land of the Green Isles. Sailing to find her, his ship wrecks on the Isle of the Crown amid stormy seas. The archipelago's islands, each drawing from myths like Arabian tales, Greek legends, Wonderland whimsy, sacred mountains, and beastly curses, are divided by ancient feuds and tensions are high. Alexander explores the Isles of Crown, Wonder, Sacred Mountain, Beast, and Myst, gathering enchanted items, solving riddles rooted in folklore, and forging alliances with eccentric inhabitants like a poetic genie, quirky shopkeepers, and a beleaguered ferryman. The narrative structure of King's Quest VI, Heir Today, Gone Tomorrow, has multiple branching paths and endings, allowing players to shape Prince Alexander's journey through their choices. The game's richly detailed world, inspired by mythology and fairy tales, creates a captivating backdrop, with the Isle of the Beast and the Land of the Green Isles being particularly memorable for their unique lore and atmosphere. Critics and players have commented on the depth of the story's emotional resonance, especially in Alexander's romantic quest to rescue Princess Cassima, which added a personal stakes-driven layer to the classic adventure game formula. Series creator Roberta Williams commented on the shift in this sixth King's Quest entry towards adding a little bit of non-linearity in an interview shortly after launch of the game. King's Quest VI has 5 acts, though they are invisible to the player. The last act is the longest and has several optional subplots like the Druids and the Realm of the Dead. Although people think of it as longer and shorter versions, I think of it as doing optional stuff. In the remote Norwegian countryside, teenage orphan Jennifer Simpson arrives in the sprawling Barrows mansion, dubbed Clock Tower, alongside her friends Anne, Laura, and Lot, under the care of their adoptive mother Mary to meet the haggard Simon Barrows. But as the girls explore the dimly lit halls and chambers, screams echo through the estate, signaling the emergence of a grotesque killer armed with massive scissors who methodically stalks them. Jennifer scrambles through locked doors, hidden passages, and eerie artifacts, piecing together fragments of the Barrow family's cursed history tied to deformed offspring and ritualistic horrors. Clock Tower's somewhat pioneering use of a point-and-click interface combined with a survival horror narrative created a tense atmosphere where players feel genuinely vulnerable as they guide Jennifer through a mansion stalked by the relentless Scissor Man. This unique blend of helplessness and exploration, driven by player choice, engrosses players in a cinematic psychological horror experience unlike typical action-oriented games of the era. Director Hifumi Kono talked about the groundbreaking horror elements of Clock Tower in a 2021 interview, saying, "When I created Clock Tower, I drew from what fascinated me about horror films like Phenomena and Suspiria, the suspense of being chased and the thrill of hiding from a killer while holding your breath. Neither of these aspects existed in video games at the time. That's why I felt it was worth depicting them." Animator Drew Blank, trapped in a rut churning out saccharine episodes of the Fluffy Bun Bun show, dozes off at his drafting table and awakens inside his own cartoon universe. Paired with his hyperactive creation Flux Wildly, Drew lands in Qtopia, a cloyingly sweet domain ruled by benevolent King Hugh, now threatened by neighboring Malevolandia's despot Count Nefarious. Nefarious unleashes a Malevolator beam that twists adorable critters into vicious beasts, scheming to overrun the realms and impose eternal gloom. Drew and Flux scour the divided lands made up of cutesy pictures, zany wilds, and dark fortresses, gathering together oddball gadgets for a counter-weapon, the Cutifier, while dodging pun-riddled perils and enlisting allies like a jittery scarecrow and burly lumberjack. The live-action segments in Toonstruck, starring Christopher Lloyd, anchor the protagonist Drew's real-world malaise, contrasting with the hyper-vivid cartoon antics to highlight internal conflicts through meta-humor and visual gags. This innovative mix, coupled with a sharp, self-aware script, creates a distinctive game that was filled with creativity and humor. Writer Jennifer McWilliams summarized Toonstruck in a 2022 interview, explaining, "The story of Toonstruck was about Drew Blank, a man who created a cartoon empire that he never wanted to create, and his journey to find his lost creativity. The idea was you were playing this animator who had always wanted to do this crazy character Flux, and then he got stuck doing the Fluffy Bun Bun show. He always wanted to do a show about Flux and all these crazy characters in his head, and now he gets to go there. That's a pretty clever idea for a game." Shipwrecked by a violent storm during his voyage home from Hyrule, Link washes ashore on the mysterious Koholint Island, a lush, isolated paradise ringed by ocean and dotted with villages, beaches, forests, and mountains. Disoriented and swordless, he meets a cheerful singer named Marin, who resembles Princess Zelda and her mushroom-obsessed father Tarin, who aids his recovery. An owl informs him that escape requires awakening the guardian windfish slumbering in a giant egg atop Mount Tamaranch by collecting 8 sirens' instruments hidden in treacherous dungeons guarded by fearsome nightmares. As Link explores the island and its talking animals, change haunts, and phone booths, he gathers magical items, solves riddles, and uncovers fragments of otherworldly lore. What sets The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening apart from other Zelda games is its surreal dreamlike narrative set on Koholint Island, a place revealed to be a dream of the Windfish. This twist adds a layer of emotional depth and philosophical intrigue as players grapple with the implications of Link's actions in a fleeting, illusory world. The story's melancholic tone and ambiguous ending subverted expectations in a Game Boy title, making it a must-play handheld entry for the famous Zelda franchise. Scriptwriter Kensuke Tanabe has commented on the unique setup for the game. When I started on Link's Awakening, I was given a list of requirements by the director Mr. Tezuka, such as no appearances by Ganon, no Hyrule, and no Triforce. I was told to make it feel like Zelda, but not to use any of the same places or characters, so I began thinking up a new story. I love foreign drama series, and at the time Twin Peaks was popular among a wide range of ages, so I thought of putting a similar mysterious mood into the game. In the vast continent of Tamriel, Imperial battle mage Jagar Tharn betrays Emperor Uriel Septim VII, imprisoning him in oblivion and assuming his identity through illusion. Tharn slays his apprentice Rhea Silmaine for defying him, but her spirit endures to aid an imprisoned hero's escape. The protagonist ventures across Tamriel's provinces, High Rock, Skyrim, Morrowind, and others, seeking the 8 shattered pieces of the Staff of Chaos hidden in ancient dungeons. Navigating cities, wilderness, and perilous layers, the hero confronts beasts, riddles, and dark forces. The Elder Scrolls I, Arena, has a story that's driven by a unique artifact, the Staff of Chaos, which is split into 8 pieces that the player has to collect across Tamriel, creating a quest structure that encourages exploration of diverse regions. This has become a mainstay for the series. The game's narrative is also notable for its use of dream visions from the sorceress Rhea Silmaine, adding a mystical layer to the storytelling. This approach ties the story closely to the open-world exploration, as each piece of staff is hidden in a distinct province, making the journey feel expansive and interconnected. Julian LaFay, lead programmer on Arena, said in a 1996 interview when discussing the massive world-building effort behind the game, "We designed the most important cities and characters by hand. That is, everything connected to the main story and the areas surrounding those locations. Of course, we couldn't design all 15,000 locations ourselves, so we gave our computer templates which it used to generate a wide variety of settlements." In a remote mountain village, young Tanner Hero awakens from vivid dreams of an invisible self in a parallel realm, blurring lines between reality and illusion. Joined by sturdy carpenter Hassan, enigmatic seer Millie, and other friends like amnesiac warrior Terry and the playful slime Healy, he journeys through vast kingdoms, floating isles, and shadowy depths. Their trek uncovers fragmented memories and hidden connections between the tangible world and the dreamscape teeming with spectral echoes, as they confront the tyrannical demon Murdaugh, threatening existence itself. The deep job system in Dragon Quest VI allows characters to choose and master various vocations like warrior or mage, which significantly impacts their abilities and growth, adding strategic depth to the story's progression. And the game's dual world mechanic, where players navigate between a real world and a dream world, creates a unique narrative structure that ties directly into character development and exploration. This interplay between worlds makes environmental puzzles and story events more dynamic, as actions in one world can affect the other in interesting ways, similar to other games on this list. Yuji Horii, creator and scenario writer, talked about the importance of the hero's journey in the game, saying, "The story of Dragon Quest VI is about the hero discovering who he is. That's the main theme. So the hero starts out without knowing anything about himself, and as he adventures, he gradually learns who he is. That's why we didn't give the hero a name in the game. We wanted the player to feel like they were the hero, and that they were discovering who they were." In the quiet suburb of Onet, young Ness discovers his psychic abilities after a meteor crash introduces Buzzbuzz, a time-traveling insect foretelling the alien conqueror Gygas's bid to engulf the world in hatred. Ness ventures across Eagle Land's modern landscapes, small towns, bustling cities, deserts, and underground realms, to unite with allies Paula, a telekinetic girl, Jeff, a gadget whiz boy, and Pooh, a disciplined prince. They gather 8 sanctuary melodies to bolster their spirits against Gygas's corrupting influence, battling quirky foes like deranged cultists, animated trash cans, and robotic invaders. Everyday objects become weapons in absurd skirmishes, while encounters with eccentric locals highlight the blend of ordinary life with supernatural chaos. The story of Earthbound stands out for its unorthodox, humorous tone, blending everyday settings like suburbs and diners with bizarre, surreal elements like psychic powers and alien invasions. Its dialogue, packed with witty banter and absurd situations, creates a uniquely grounded yet offbeat narrative. The game's use of a modern American-inspired world as a backdrop for an RPG adventure feels distinct, making ordinary places like schools and arcades feel strangely epic. Shigesato Itoi, the game's writer and director, reflected on Earthbound's modern relatability in 2013, even down to the character design. I wanted to create a game with real characters whom players would recognize in the people around them. In this shadowy metropolis, blending medieval grit with nascent industrial machines, Master Thief Garrett prowls the underbelly, lifting valuables from corrupt nobles and dodging watchful guards. Raised as an orphan and briefly schooled by the Cryptic Keepers, a clandestine order obsessed with prophecies and balance, he spurns their doctrines for a life of solitary opportunism. A seemingly simple job to pilfer a mystical gemstone spirals into entanglement with rival sects, the rigid Hammerites who forge mechanical wonders in pursuit of divine order, and the feral pagans who venerate chaotic nature spirits amid overgrown ruins. As Garrett uncovers deceitful schemes tied to an ancient artifact, he grapples with forces threatening the fragile equilibrium between progress and primal decay. The stealth-based gameplay of Thief is deeply integrated with its story, as Garrett's role as a master thief shapes the narrative where player choice in investigating shadows and avoiding conflict drives the plot forward. The game's use of audio logs and environmental storytelling like scattered notes and overheard guard conversations creates an immense world where the story unfolds organically through exploration. This approach makes the city feel alive and responsive, tying the narrative directly to the player's actions. Ken Levine, the game's original writer, said in a 2011 interview, "I wanted it to be familiar to a fantasy audience, because it's a fantasy world, but I also wanted it to feel like a film noir. The closest analog to a thief would be a private detective. I started thinking about a hybrid aesthetic which was not just on-the-nose fantasy, it was more of a noir aesthetic. The steampunky stuff worked well with that." In the tribal village of Arroyo, founded by the Vault Dwellers' descendants, a severe drought threatens survival. As the chosen one, grandchild of the legendary hero, you're tasked by the Elder to retrieve the mythical Gek from Vault 13 to restore fertility to the land. Venturing into the sprawling Northern California wasteland, you navigate bustling hubs like the mob-ruled New Reno, elitist Vault City, and lawless Redding, forging alliances or rivalries with factions including slavers, mutants, and the remnants of pre-war government. Encounters range from quirky side quests involving talking deathclaws and sci-fi Easter eggs, to gritty dealings with drugs, prostitution, and corruption. Major themes include the fragility of rebuilding civilization, moral ambiguity in survival, satirical takes on Western culture, and the impact of player choice on a reactive world. In Fallout 2, player choices ripple through a reactive wasteland, altering faction standings and town fates in ways that reflect ethical decisions. This reputation system in the game dynamically shapes the story, as your actions in one town, like siding with a faction or committing crimes, ripple across the game world, altering how other towns and NPCs react to you. The ability to resolve major story conflicts through non-combat means, such as diplomacy or stealth, gives players significant freedom in how the story progresses. This system ties directly into the story's emphasis on choice, making each playthrough feel uniquely personal. Tim Kaine, lead programmer on Fallout and contributor to Fallout 2, reflected on player-driven stories. "We wanted Fallout 2 to feel like the world was alive, reacting to what you did. If you played as a diplomat, the game should feel different than if you played as a murderer, and we tried to write dialogues and quests to reflect that." In a world where elite military academies train mercenaries called Seeds, aloof cadet Squall Leonhardt graduates from Balam Garden amid escalating conflicts with the expansionist nation Galbadia. Teamed with instructor Quistis Trape, energetic Zell Dinkt, and perky Selfie Tilmit, Squall aids the resistance group, led by free-spirited Renoa Hartilli against sorceress Adia Kramer's rising influence. Missions span from covert assassinations to large-scale battles, expanding the party to include sharpshooter Irvine Kineas and others as they travel diverse landscapes including coastal towns, arid deserts, orbital stations, and ancient estuaries. The junction system in Final Fantasy VIII's story integrates character progression with the narrative, as players draw magic from enemies and environments to customize stats and abilities, creating a unique synergy between gameplay and the world's lore. The game's focus on time compression as a central plot device introduces a mind-bending concept effectively, and Squall's introspective character development, explored through internal monologues, adds emotion to the story's progression. Director Yoshinori Kitase said in a 1998 interview, in a statement somewhat humorously similar to the one you heard earlier in the video about Final Fantasy VII, "From the start, our principal objective with Final Fantasy VIII was to tell a story that revolved around the two characters Squall and Rinoa. Up to now, Final Fantasy games have featured large ensemble casts, and a story balance between the different characters, who each have their own individual dramas. But this time, we were serious about using the sub-characters specifically to prop up the story of the hero and heroine." In New York City on Christmas Eve 1997, NYPD rookie Aya Bree attends an opera at Carnegie Hall where the audience spontaneously combusts except for her and actress Melissa Pierce. Melissa transforms into Mitochondria Eve, awakening sentient mitochondria and cells to mutate humans and animals into grotesque neo-mitochondrial creatures. Aya, with unique mitochondrial powers granting immunity and parasite energy abilities, pursues Eve across the city over 6 days, assisted by partner Daniel Dawes and scientist Kunihiko Maeda. Aya investigates Eve's scheme to birth an ultimate being capable of overriding humanity. The plot layers of Parasite Eve blend scientific concepts with survival horror, unfolding through real-time battles where Aya's powers evolve alongside revelations about her past. The integration of mitochondrial biology into the story creates a unique sci-fi horror premise, where mitochondria evolve to control and manipulate human hosts. This concept is woven into the narrative through Aya's struggle against these sentient organelles, blending real-world science with supernatural elements. The game's use of New York City as a grounded urban setting enhances the chilling atmosphere of this biological threat. Director Takashi Tokita described Parasite Eve's style as a cinematic RPG, with its look and feel strongly alluding to an interactive movie-like experience. Producer Hironobu Sakaguchi expanded on a significant shift in the setting of the game, saying, "During the first 6 months of production, the game was to be set in Tokyo and act as a more direct sequel to the novel, but I suggested setting the game in New York City." In the Gothic realm of Nosgoth, nobleman Cain is murdered by bandits during a roadside ambush. Revived as a vampire by the necromancer Mortanius, he embarks on a vengeful odyssey to slaughter his killers. Guided by Ariel, the ghostly guardian of balance, Cain discovers the Pillars of Nosgoth, towering monoliths upholding the land's equilibrium, now fracturing due to madness and betrayal among their 9 sorcerer protectors, called the Circle of Nine. Among fog-shrouded villages, war-torn battlefields, and ancient crypts, he sustains his undead form by draining blood from foes and innocents alike, acquiring arcane powers and artifacts along the way. In Blood Omen, Legacy of Cain, vampiric necessities like feeding and transformations drive the exploration, reflecting Cain's shift from mortal frailty to predatory dominance while amplifying internal strife. The morality system lets players shape Cain's path through choices, and like other games, this impacts how the story unfolds and offers you a sense of player agency. The game's dark, gothic narrative, delivered through extensive voice-acted cutscenes, creates an entrancing atmosphere with philosophical undertones. The non-linear storytelling allows players to explore the world of Nosgoth in a way that meshes well with Cain's evolving character. Dennis Dyack, founder of the developer Silicon Knights, commented on the ambitious scale of the story and how they wanted to go even further, saying, "We created the first Legacy of Cain, we came up with all of the content, all the story, but in the end we weren't able to do everything we wanted to because of the content we had. If we had more content, the game would have been longer, but at the end of the day, the content was what it was." In the futuristic metropolis of Newport, art student April Ryan grapples with vivid nightmares and a stagnant life among eccentric friends like hacker Zach and painter Fiona, while working dead-end jobs and dodging family pressures. Guided by cryptic mentor Cortez, she uncovers her ability to shift between parallel universes: Stark, a realm dominated by science and technology, and Arcadia, a magical domain of dreams and folklore, divided centuries ago to preserve equilibrium. As boundaries blur with chaotic incursions threatening both, April embarks on a multi-dimensional odyssey, allying with a sarcastic bird called Crow, mystical guardians, and diverse inhabitants from bustling ports to enchanted wilds. Like a few others on this list, The Longest Journey's story stands out for its deep integration of the dual worlds concept, with the two woven together through intricate narrative choices that shape April's journey. Its use of philosophical and mythological themes, like the balance between chaos and order, adds a layer of intellectual depth uncommon in adventure games of the 90s, and the dialogue system, blending humor and emotional weight, creates a uniquely immersive storytelling experience. In a 2008 Rock Paper Shotgun interview, The Longest Journey's creator Ragnar Tornquist gave some insights on his own interpretation of the dual world, saying, "I realized that the game wasn't really about a terrible world and a beautiful world. I realized it was more about the balance between chaos and order, magic and science, dream and reality." Commander Boston Lowe leads a NASA team, including geologist Ludger Brink and journalist Maggie Robbins, to deflect an asteroid threatening Earth by planting nuclear charges. Upon activation, the asteroid reveals itself as an alien vessel, transporting the trio to a distant barren world called Cocytus, filled with the unexplored ruins of a long-extinct civilization. Stranded without communication, they decipher advanced mechanisms, revive crystalline entities, and grapple with interpersonal strains amid their isolation. Lowe's leadership is tested as Brink's impulsiveness and Robin's determination clash, uncovering hints of the aliens' fate tied to dimensional rifts and ethereal life forms. The Dig features a unique story element where the alien device, the Eye, allows characters to experience visions that blend memory and premonition, creating a layered storytelling experience. This mechanic integrates player choices with the unfolding mystery of an ancient civilization, making the story feel dynamic and personal. The game's use of philosophical themes like the cost of immortality adds a lot of complexity to its science fiction premise. Project leader Sean Clark reflected on narrative challenges for the Dig compared to other LucasArts titles, saying, "As you would imagine, a lot of the things you can do in a comedy game just don't work when trying to remain serious. You can't cover up a bad puzzle with a funny line of self-referential dialogue. Not that I ever do that. But anyway, it was also a challenge to maintain the tone and some semblance of a dramatic arc." In the Mushroom Kingdom, Mario storms Bowser's Keep to rescue Princess Toadstool, but a colossal sword named Exor crashes from the heavens, shattering the Star Road into 7 star pieces scattered across the land. This rupture halts wishes from coming true worldwide. Mario unites with Mallow, a fluffy cloud prince searching for his origins, Geno, a celestial spirit animating a wooden doll to mend the stars, Toadstool, who escapes to aid the cause, and even Bowser himself, who's been ousted from his domain by invaders. Journeying through quirky realms like Moleville's Mines, Booster's Tower, and Nimbus Land's cloudy heights, they clash with the Smithy Gang's mechanical hordes. Super Mario RPG, Legend of the Seven Stars, a collaboration between Nintendo and Square, introduced a unique blend of Mario's whimsical world with deep RPG storytelling, creating a narrative tone that balances humor and heroism. The game's use of the 7 stars as central plot devices ties the story to a cosmic quest, giving it a distinct mythological feel within the Mario universe. In a 2022 interview, Chihiro Fujioka, one of the game's directors, reflected, "I think there are sections that will inspire players to stop and think, man, I don't want to leave this place just yet. I'd like to keep exploring and linger here a bit." Of course, you can just hurry and move to the next area, but Mario isn't supposed to be that serious. We want players to enjoy themselves in a more leisurely fashion. After a catastrophic car crash, the protagonist awakens disoriented and swathed in bandages within a derelict asylum's tower, engulfed in flames and echoes of torment, his memories erased. As Max, he traverses hallucinatory domains such as a forsaken hamlet teeming with malformed youngsters dominated by a grotesque maternal entity, a macabre funfair of aberrations, a buzzing insect colony, and primordial Aztec territories rife with ritualistic demands. Fleeting lucid moments unveil shards of history, including a sibling's demise, a community decimated by contagion, fervent experiments to combat affliction despite the significant moral cost. Murmurs from an ominous physician and vanished kin permeate the disarray, eroding distinctions between derangement and truth. The story of Sanitarium features a psychological horror approach, seemingly blending reality and hallucination as the protagonist navigates bizarre, nightmarish worlds, like a town of deformed children and an alien hive. These settings, rich with unsettling imagery, create a deeply fascinating narrative that explores trauma and identity through a fragmented, dreamlike lens. The game's use of shifting perspectives, where players control different characters like a young girl or an Aztec god, enhances the storytelling by exploring trauma from multiple angles. Lead designer Mike Nicholson commented on the way the story was carefully crafted to build character tension, saying, "At one point, the feedback we received was that players wouldn't be able to identify with the main character of Max because his head was wrapped in bandages, and they suggested we remove them. Considering the story and the huge reveal at the end of the game with Max's bandages coming off, you can imagine our response to that." In New Orleans, bookstore owner and aspiring writer Gabriel Knight researches a series of gruesome voodoo murders for his next novel, assisted by sharp-tongued researcher Grace Nakimura and bumbling detective friend Franklin Mosley. Plagued by vivid nightmares of rituals and shadows, he uncovers ties to his estranged family heritage as a Schattenjäger, inheriting a talisman and ancient duties from his uncle Wolfgang Ritter in Germany. As killings intensify, Gabriel infiltrates secretive cults, deciphers historical voodoo symbols and African diaspora lore, and confronts supernatural forces rooted in slave revolts and Iowa spirits. Blending Southern Gothic atmosphere with personal demons, the tale explores ancestral burdens, cultural mysticism, skepticism yielding to belief, and moral reckonings amid humid bayous, jazz-filled streets, and hidden crypts. Gabriel Knight, Sins of the Fathers, the first Gabriel Knight entry, intricately weaves voodoo mythology with a gritty, noir-inspired detective narrative, creating a unique supernatural mystery. Its use of real-world cultural elements like New Orleans voodoo history grounds the fantastical plot in a richly detailed setting. The game's narrative structure allows players choices to subtly influence Gabriel's moral development, adding to the character-driven story. Jane Jensen, the game's writer and designer, has explained, "The really good thing about a mystery is there are a lot of actions you would take in a mystery story that would translate well to game puzzles. It's a matter of trying to think about the story flow. I knew I wanted to do some kind of mystery series. A lot of Gabriel Knight was actually fashioned when I got the idea for the first case. Because I knew I wanted it to be set in New Orleans, I knew I wanted to be voodoo related." In the Kingdom of Guardia, during its millennial fair, adventurous teen Chrono befriends the rebellious Marl and inventor Luca, whose teleportation mishap propels them across epochs, from a prehistoric wilderness teeming with dinosaurs and tribes, to a medieval era of chivalric quests and sorcery, further to a dystopian future ravaged by apocalypse and beyond. Joined by allies like the valiant Frog Knight Frog, robotic guardian Robo, and prehistoric warrior Ayla, they unravel a cosmic threat tied to an extraterrestrial entity draining the planet's life force. Journeys through time portals expose interconnected histories where actions in one age ripple to others, highlighting cycles of destruction and renewal, bonds transcending eras, environmental fragility from unchecked progress, and the tension between predetermined fate and willful change in a vast temporal tapestry. The time travel mechanic in Chrono Trigger's story allows players to influence events across multiple eras in a really interesting way, creating a dynamic narrative where choices in one time period significantly alter outcomes in another. This non-linear storytelling, including the myriad side quests and driven by the player's actions, contributes seamlessly to the game's many multiple endings, offering a unique sense that your actions have a real impact on this universe across the ages. The ensemble cast, with distinct motivations tied to their respective time periods, enriches the narrative to the point where you genuinely care about each of their fortunes. Scenario writer Masato Kato talked about the importance of world building and character design in a 2008 interview, saying, "Chrono Trigger was a game with a very simple story, but I think we were able to create a very deep world by having the characters travel through time. The story itself is simple, but the world is deep." Director Yoshinori Kitase said in a 1995 interview, "We wanted to make a game that would be fun to play, but also have a story that would make people think. We wanted to make a game that would be remembered for a long time." The famed director got his wish, of course, as did the many others who contributed to the story-driven masterpieces that filled this epic decade. If you've made it this far, we'd really appreciate if you would consider subscribing to our channel and liking the video. Your support means a lot.